You're listening to Paranomaly, stories inspired by the unexplained, the forgotten, and the things people swear they experienced. Every episode begins with fiction. Then we explore the real reports, encounters, and mysteries that inspired it. If you've experienced something you can't explain, you can share your story at paranomalymedia.com. And if you enjoy the show, leaving a review helps Paranomaly reach more listeners. Fiction first, then the truth. I didn't believe in hauntings when I moved into the farmhouse. People hear stories about places like this and assume you walk in already afraid. I wasn't. The house was cheap. That was the reason for the purchase. Old farmhouse in Tennessee, half surrounded by woods, long gravel driveway, no nearby neighbors. The kind of place most people avoid because they think isolation feels uncomfortable. To me, it felt quiet. After years of apartment walls and traffic and hearing strangers argue through paper-thin drywall at 3 a.m, quiet sounded perfect. The first week there was normal. Mostly unpacking, fixing small things, learning the sounds old houses make at night because old houses always make sounds. Wood settles, pipes knock, floors creak. You hear it enough and you eventually stop noticing. At least that's what I thought. The knocking started on the 8th night. 3 slow knocks directly beneath my bedroom floor. Not loud, not violent, measured, like someone underneath the house was trying to get my attention. I remember laying there staring at the ceiling, listening. Nothing happened afterwards, just silence. I almost got up to check. Instead, I rolled over and went back to sleep. The second night, it happened again. 3 knocks, same spot, same spacing. I got up this time, and I grabbed my flashlight and went outside. The crawlspace entrance was behind the house. It was locked, still chained. No sign anyone had touched it. I remember crouching there in the dark, aiming the flashlight into the gaps beneath the house. Nothing but dirt and old pipes. I stood there for another minute, listening. That's when I noticed how quiet it was. No insects, no wind, nothing. Just me standing there breathing. As I reached the front door, something knocked beneath the floor again, hard enough this time that I heard dishes rattle inside the kitchen. I hurried inside, and I convinced myself it was an animal. It had to be. A raccoon or a stray dog, something trapped beneath the house where I couldn't see. I called a pest control company the next morning. The guy checked the crawl space that afternoon, came back out kind of annoyed. Nothing under there, he said. I asked maybe if something got in and left, and he shook his head. No tracks, no nests, nothing. Then he looked past me toward the house. You been hearing knocking? I paused a second before answering, and that was enough for him. Old houses do weird things, he said quickly. But the way he said it sounded rehearsed, like he just wanted to leave. And he did. That night, the knocking moved. 3 knocks, directly outside my bedroom door. I sat upright immediately. The hallway light was off, and everything outside the room was completely dark. Then it happened again. Knock, knock, knock. Not random, not house sounds. It was intentional. I grabbed my flashlight and opened the door immediately. Nothing there, but the hallway felt cold. The kind that feels wet against your skin. I checked every room, every window, every lock. Nothing. I was halfway back to the bedroom when I heard it behind me. A woman humming. Soft and slow. Like someone absent-mindedly singing to themselves while cooking. I froze. The sound was coming from the kitchen. I stood there listening for nearly 10 seconds before forcing myself down the hall, light in hand. The humming stopped the moment my foot touched the end of the hall. The kitchen was empty, but one cabinet door was open. Inside, the shelves had been emptied. Every plate had been removed and stacked on the counter. I stared at them, trying to make sense of it. I lived alone. No one else had a key, and I knew for a fact those cabinets had been closed earlier. That was the first time I genuinely felt afraid. Not startled, afraid. Because whatever it was, it could touch things. The activity escalated after that. Every night something new. Footsteps in empty rooms, scratching inside walls, whispers too faint to understand. Sometimes I'd hear movement directly outside my bedroom window, slow pacing through the grass, back and forth, always stopping when I looked outside. I stopped sleeping properly, stopped unpacking, stopped trying to convince myself it was just the house noises. Then came the voice. I woke around 3 a.m. to someone speaking softly beside my bed. Not aggressively, just conversationally. like I'd interrupted someone already talking. At first, I thought it was a dream, until I realized the voice changed and was now saying my name over and over, quietly. I opened my eyes slowly. The room was dark except for the slight moonlight through the blinds. No one there, but the voice continued. Female and older, calm. Then it said, "You shouldn't have come here." I couldn't move. It was pure human fear. The kind that locks your muscles because your brain suddenly realizes something impossible is happening. Then the mattress shifted beside me like someone had just sat down, and the voice came again, closer this time. "I know what you did." That hit harder than anything else because suddenly every private thing I'd ever regretted came rushing into my head. Things nobody knew, things I never said out loud, and somehow the voice sounded certain, like it actually knew. I turned the lamp on so violently it fell off the nightstand and the room was empty, but the indentation remained beside me on the mattress, clear as day. I left before sunrise, packed enough clothes for a few days, and drove to a motel 30 miles away. I told myself I just needed sleep, distance, perspective. I even laughed about it while trying to convince myself I was overreacting. Then the motel phone rang around midnight. I answered, half asleep. No one spoke for several seconds. It was just static. Then a woman's voice came on the line, just humming, and the line disconnected. I drove back to the farmhouse the next morning because part of me needed an explanation, something logical. The front door was wide open when I arrived. I knew I'd locked it. Inside, the house looked untouched, except for one thing. Written across the kitchen wall in black letters nearly 3 feet high were the words, "Shouldn't have come here." And beneath the message, 3 slow knocks echoed from somewhere underneath the floor. The story you just heard was inspired by one of the most famous hauntings in American history, the Bell Witch, a case that began in rural Tennessee in the early 1800s and became so widely known that people reportedly traveled from other states just to witness the activity for themselves. The legend centers around the Bell family, who lived near what is now Adams, Tennessee. According to reports from the time, the disturbances began around 1817. At first, the events sounded almost explainable. Just some strange animals appearing near the property, knocking sounds on the walls, scratching noises beneath the house, chains dragging across the floor at night. The family reportedly heard invisible dogs fighting outside the home, and the children claimed blankets were pulled from their beds while they slept. But over time, even that escalated. And that escalation is what separates the Bell Witch from any other haunting stories, because this entity didn't reportedly behave like a mindless force. It behaved like something intelligent. The Bell family claimed the entity could speak, not random sounds or just whispers people struggle to understand, but full conversations. According to historical accounts, the voice identified itself at different times as a spirit, a witch, or something connected to a woman named Kate Batts, which is where the name Kate became attached to the entity. The voice reportedly knew personal information about visitors. It repeated sermons delivered miles apart on the same day, and it shared gossip from neighboring homes. And some witnesses claimed it could imitate voices and accents perfectly. One account describes a visitor testing the entity by asking a private question only his grandmother would know. The spirit allegedly answered immediately using his grandmother's accent. Another visitor from England reportedly heard the voice mimic his parents overseas, and the next morning he allegedly received information that his family in England had heard his voice calling out during the night. And then there was the violence. The Bell family's youngest daughter, Betsy Bell, appeared to become one of the primary targets. Historical accounts describe her being slapped, pinched, scratched, and having her hair pulled by something invisible. Witnesses claimed these attacks happened in front of multiple people. At times, the entity reportedly focused its attention on John Bell Sr., the patriarch of the family. According to reports, he began suffering from unexplained health problems during the haunting, episodes of paralysis, difficulty swallowing, and sudden weakness. The entity allegedly mocked him openly, referring to him as Old Jack while claiming it intended to kill him. The story reaches its darkest point with John Bell's death in December of 1820. According to the accounts, the family discovered a strange vial of liquid near his bedside after he failed to wake. The Bell Witch allegedly claimed responsibility immediately, saying it had poisoned him. One report states the liquid was tested and was found to be poison, although the kind is unknown. Whether true or not, the story spread rapidly, and the haunting became part of American folklore almost immediately. One of the most famous claims connected to the Bell Witch involves future President Andrew Jackson. According to the legend, Jackson traveled to investigate the haunting personally after hearing stories about the entity. The story says his wagon became mysteriously stuck near the Bell property until a disembodied voice spoke from the woods. That night, one of Jackson's men allegedly mocked the entity and claimed he could handle witches. According to the story, something invisible violently attacked the man and dragged him from the house. Jackson supposedly responded saying, "I'd rather fight the British than deal with the Bell Witch." Now, historically, there's debate over whether Jackson ever actually visited, and some researchers believe the story was exaggerated later. Others believe portions of it may be true, and that uncertainty is interesting because the Bell Witch exists in a strange space between documented history, oral tradition, witness testimony, and folklore. Unlike many haunting stories, the legend didn't remain confined to the Bell family home. Over time, reports connected to the haunting began spreading throughout the surrounding property and land itself. One location in particular became permanently tied to the legend: the Bell Witch Cave. The cave sits near the original Bell property and has become one of the most discussed paranormal locations connected to the haunting. According to local reports and later witness accounts, people exploring the cave describe strange voices, screams, footsteps, groaning sounds, and encounters with unseen presences deep underground. Some visitors claimed they heard something speaking from inside the darkness. Others describe being touched, scratched, or followed through the tunnels. One story tells of a man encountering a rabbit near the cave entrance that suddenly spoke directly to him before disappearing into the woods. Whether those reports are connected to the original haunting or simply grew from the legend itself is impossible to know. But that is part of what makes the Bell Witch case so unusual. It didn't end cleanly. The story spread and the reports continue, and over generations the Bell Witch transformed from a family haunting into something woven directly into the region itself. Even skeptics admit the legend became powerful enough to shape the people living around it. Families blamed strange events on the witch, arguments and murders and disappearances, and people accused one another of witchcraft connected to the Bell legend decades after the original haunting. And that may be the most unsettling part of all, not whether the story was true, but how deeply the fear rooted itself into the people living there. Because unlike most ghost stories, the Bell Witch was never been described as trapped in the home. It moved freely, and it spoke intelligently. It targeted people specifically, and according to the original reports, it knew things it shouldn't have known. Even today, the Bell Witch remains one of the most discussed paranormal cases in American history, not because anyone definitively proved what happened, but because nearly 200 years later, people are still asking the same question: what exactly was talking to that family? You've been listening to Paranomaly. If you've experienced something you can't explain, share your story at paranomalymedia.com. And remember, just because something hasn't been explained yet, doesn't mean it never happened.